This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
There we go. Okay, so let's see, Thursday, May 11th, 7:04 p.m. This is Southampton's Greenway Committee. Okay, so we just need to identify a minutes taker, and then we can jump in with the agenda, which puts Alex first. Would anyone like to volunteer to take minutes?
I can volunteer again. I'm the new guy.
Okay, so then that being said, do we need to make a motion that David can record minutes?
Well, I don't know. Would you be willing to work a deal that we alternate times, or be to do it?
I'm only offering because nobody else might want to do it. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, I did it last time, and I'd be glad to do it tonight. But if you want to volunteer, that's good too.
I don't want, if it's something you'd like to do.
But would you like to do something on a more permanent basis, so Aaron doesn't have to go through this every meeting? So you do it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You do it for every other meeting, or do it every 6 months, or something like that?
Every other was fine.
Every other, okay. That has to be a motion.
Do you want to?
I talked to.
Job before?
Boy, I don't think so.
Okay.
I only pinch hit a couple of times. I think I
Okay.
And Ellen, you take good minutes. Would you be interested in doing it?
So are we saying we need to assign a secretary for the committee according to?
Yes, we're supposed to have a secretary or clerk, whatever else. And I talked to Chris Fowles, and she said we need to put a motion up telling who the people are and when they're going to take the minutes, and the committee has to approve it. Approve the motion.
So I'll make a motion
Okay.
that Janet Brown and David Roger be clerks or secretaries for the committee, and between the two of them, they will arrange who will take the minutes of the meeting.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we all approve. Vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't mind those extra steps, and of course, unless if no one really wants the responsibility, I will probably continue to ask for rotating minutes takers, but so be it for now.
Okay. Sounds good.
That said,
Thank you.
Unless there's any other urgent topics to start with, I did invite Alex to share. We can flip it over to him.
Want me to come up there somewhere?
Up to you, wherever you're comfy.
Will he be seen on the recording?
You're not on the TV if you don't want to be. Your audio will be.
It would be good. Come join the table.
I will come join the table.
Pick a chair.
Any chair, right?
Yeah.
I want to sit at the head. I don't want to look like I'll sit in the chair over here. So my name's Alex Fackman. I'm a project manager with Ty and Bond, just up the road. This committee, acting with the town administrator, Mr. Gibson, got in touch with us about the project, which I'm pretty excited about. I grew up in East Hampton with close access to the South Street, Manhattan Rail Trail access, so something I've known, my whole life, and been excited about the possibility of the extension. So I'm excited to be involved. I think I'm not gonna I brought these slides, which we presented. Mark and Aaron and Ed and Randall joined Ty and Bond on a call with the state last week. And it was a short little slideshow we did. I brought 5 copies that, and I'm not gonna go through the scope stuff because I think you folks all understand the project that we're trying to work on, which is from Coleman Road down to Sheldon's, basically, the first 3.1 miles of the right-of-way that you recently acquired. But I think what I did want to try to give you a little bit of appreciation for is maybe the road ahead here based on working with Mass DOT. So this project is being initiated as a transportation improvement project through the state. And so that type of project's eligible for federal dollars, 100% of construction costs, a lot of the overheads during construction, like the resident engineering. But there's this process to get there where you have to go through the rigorous, Mass DOT design process. You've got to check a lot of boxes with those folks, and Aaron and Mark had the privilege of observing stage, 0.1 of that process last Thursday. So where we are right now would be called project development or pre-design. what we're doing is we're working with the state through their project initiation tool to scope out this corridor. And the things they're looking for are environmental triggers, EJ population. They're looking for connectivity of bike network. If it was a road project, it'd be road network. This project scores favorably with a lot of those conditions. This project was known to them. It was approved 10 years ago or so before the right-of-way issues came up. So there's no surprises there. There's no expectation of it not being reapproved, but we're still bumping our heads against their process and their schedule to actually get it as a relisted TIP project.
EJ is environmental justice for.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. And so that's income, minority, non-native English speaker. It's all those different census block groups that receive different
And
considerations.
Southampton doesn't meet criteria, but parts of East Hampton and Westfield do, that we're going to be
We're going to hit
assisting.
their buffers basically, so we'll probably trip some of those. Frankly, for a bike path, it's actually favorable to be in those areas, but it does potentially change permitting requirements down the road, which is cart before the horse, and we can talk about that in the future. But so what happens once we get through this MAP-IT process and this project initiation process is MassDOT will say to Pioneer Valley Region, this is a valid project, we support it being listed on the actual funding program, the TIP funding program. And that's like a 5-year rolling funding program where the actual construction dollars come from. So, I guess that's the biggest takeaway from that is like your construction dollars on a TIP project are likely 5 years out. So you talk about a scheduled driver or something to kind of focus on or think about, it may not be that design takes a certain amount of time, but it's when the construction dollars might be available. So I guess I want to put that kind of 5-year funding thought process out there. I hope that we can accelerate that, given that this is a critical project, given that it's a known project, but I don't like setting expectations high. I'd rather come in, faster than that if it's possible. So we've got. How do you do that?
I mean, I don't want to put the cart before the horse either, but.
Pushing, pulling, yelling, screaming,
Okay. All right.
Rolling on the floor.
rolling on the floor, state reps, state senators.
But your work is still a 3-year process approximately.
So, yes, so I'll come back around. So one thing we did was, this committee's done a wonderful job getting some grant funding, and that grant funding has its own time sensitivities to it. And so we're not totally waiting for Mass DOT right now. A time will come when we will have to wait for Mass DOT because we have to get through their process. But we went out and initiated a survey to their standards. We went out and we initiated bridge inspection work so that we can get a better idea of what's there for those bridge structures. We're in the process of coordinating geotechnical borings near those bridges, which I will get this group in the town more information on so that you can do the outreach that you'd like to do.
Oh, this geotechnical what?
Borings.
Oh, borings.
So they'll drill, I think they're gonna go 45 feet at the bridges to get a soil profile so they can understand, or so we can document that those bridges are suitable for carrying the bikes into the future. And with these structures, it's more the age, obviously. It's something that was built for the railroad, can handle a bike going over the top of it, but they've also been there for 100 years, so.
Were there any issues that came up with their initial inspection that you know of?
No, so the initial feedback I got from, we had some folks out there from Time Bond doing visual, and then we had subcontracted with another firm to actually climb the structures, measure the members and everything. What they said was that they were in pretty good condition. For the bridges themselves, what I would expect the design to end up being would be some repairs to the stone structure, blasting and painting of the steel, maybe some welded repairs here and there to different steel members if they've lost thickness over time, and then everything on top comes off and it ends up being a wooden deck that gets put down for the bikes. But they'll largely be preserved. I would expect that rehabilitation of the steel to happen on site because both are pretty long. If you have shorter structures, they actually take them off site with a crane and they do it in a shop. But in this case, they're pretty long, so it'll likely happen out there. It would be like the big wrapped bridge structure you might see if you're driving down the road sometime or whatever, and they'll sandblast inside of that and paint when the time comes. Let's see. What am I not
So the-
touching on? You can go ahead.
Environmental.
That's definitely
The
one.
bridges again, there's two that you're talking about, the one over Gun Road and the one that's over the Manhan by Shells. Okay.
So those are the two that are, they're bridges today. Those were the two that were crawled and measured up. There's a culvert, is it Potash or Potash Brook?
Potash.
That's all it's Potash?
Potash.
Okay. That one, we have to take a closer look at from a hydrology and a hydraulic standpoint. It may be that to current standards, that actually has to be replaced with a larger structure that will also become a bridge. But if we do that, it wouldn't be a bridge like these. It's not gonna look like these. It'd be like a buried box culvert or
And there's
something.
about 10 other culverts, those are smaller.
There's 11 total. We think like 7 of them are definitely just drainage, which means if they have to be replaced, it'll just be pipes going back in the ground. I think 8. I think there's 3 that we're looking at as potentially getting upsized to meet current environmental limits.
Where are they located?
I know one of them's on the brook. The other 2, I think one is near the Sheldon's end. Of course, that's Potash, isn't it?
Well, I think it becomes into the Manhan at the sanctuary on East Street.
I believe it does, yeah.
That's before Sheldon.
Okay. So I can't tell you right now off the top of my head which ones they are. I can envision the 11 dots on the map that I've been looking at, but I can't tell you which one of those 3 dots are the potentials for upsizing.
It concerns me because it goes through my property too.
Okay, that's good to know. So that does bring me to a good point. So I know one of the things that this committee is very concerned about is making sure that residents and the butters are kept up to date. It's going to be end of summer, fall before I have like a plan on a piece of paper that identifies things like which ones of those culverts we're thinking might need an improvement. And so if you're thinking about a public information meeting that has some substance that allows people to think and talk about stuff, in my head that's probably like October. And it probably could be September, but that's a bad month to do a public meeting because everybody's going back to school and getting into routine and, that'll conflict with a lot of people's schedules. But, so I can't totally answer those questions today, but I would hope that in like October, we would have a pretty good handle on some of these bigger questions and bigger picture issues. And then you could actually get meaningful feedback from people that lived along the corridor and otherwise in town. Permitting, Mark, you brought up, absolutely. We're going to interact with the waterways. We're going through riverfront area. We're going through bordering land subject to flooding. This is absolutely going to the Conservation Commission. The questions are going to come in whether or not it's also going to MEPA review with the state and whether or not it's going to trip higher thresholds where it needs different permits from Mass DEP that happen at the state level and not just at the local conservation level.
Natural heritage endangered species.
Natural heritage endangered species, MESA will go through the NOI. It'll be a joint filing, but yeah, natural heritage will have a review through the Wetlands Protection Act notice of intent process.
And Time Bond will take care of all the permitting?
Time Bond is under contract for permitting when we get there.
And the historic?
That has to be the town putting in the NOI, but you will support us in that, is that correct?
We will put it in as your applicant, and the town will be the owner. But yes, yep. And maybe I misspoke, we may not be under contract for that, but that would be in our presumed scope of services going forward. Again, I'd have to go look at what we have with that now and what's planned for later. Permitting like that won't happen until what we call the 75% design. So if I take a half step back, we're at that pre-design with Mass DOT. It's kind of 10% is the number they use sometimes. Like that's kind of your conceptual, you're 10% into the project. That's where we are. Once we clear that hurdle, which would be after the October timeframe and incorporating input from abutters, incorporating input from the state, we can move into the preliminary design, which is 25%. That's the first time MassDOT's going to get a stack of drawings from us and study them and provide layered feedback on all different features of the project. After 25% design, there's a design public hearing, which is advertised by the state, to all the project abutters, really to the whole town. That's another public interface opportunity. But it's nice to have conducted meetings before that, because then you've already heard some of the concerns and been able to start, working through that process. Once 25% is accepted, once that design public hearing goes through, that's when you move to that 75% design and the permitting stage of the project. And then on the back end of that there's final design, which is when you develop the actual bidding documents that a contractor would price for the job.
Can I drill into that topic a little bit? Hopefully this isn't too specific, but I actually spoke to a business owner earlier who borders part of the path. Their priority is privacy. So I've always been curious, how does an abutter, whether it's a residence or a business, do they have their say, or do they make a request about fencing, shrubbery, arborvitae's? Is it like top privacy, or is it that, oh, I love it, I want access, let me just walk right to it? Is that per abutter? Is it flexible? Does it affect the cost? Essentially, just how does that work?
I've seen it go different ways on different projects. When they did the last phase of Manhan, I'm pretty sure they approached almost everybody and said, do you want fence, a shrub, or nothing? And they just let people say.
There's a variety.
Yeah. And when you go down, some people have hedgerows, some people you're looking in their backyards, other people just have the wood rail. They want to see the path, but they don't necessarily want unrestricted access. Generally, that approach works on these projects, and generally Mass DOT will pay for those work items, particularly if they're located within the right-of-way. You know, they draw a line when it comes to certain private property enhancements, because if they do something for someone, they, in theory, would then have to extend that to everyone. But the privacy and screening on these rail trails generally falls into what they'll pay for and what can be incorporated in the design. So that type of outreach would probably be appropriate to start at that 25%. Because even at 10%, we're kind of, we would call them rule plans, and you know, we're still fuzzy on details. We know where the trail's going to go, we generally know what the big improvements are, and we're open to talk about it. But when you get to 25%, you can actually see, you know, everybody's individual property and what the grading impacts look like, and you know, all that type of stuff. So that's a good time to start that kind of engagement, and we can work with DOT on when they'd like to time it, and then we can work through the town to make sure people are getting that opportunity.
Perfect. Coincidentally, the business owner was with two folks from APR,
Yep.
Agricultural Preservation.
MDAR. Yep.
So they were there checking property markers, survey marks, things like that. And I think their priority is protecting the businesses, correct me if I'm wrong. So they probably want to know if there's horse access, will it be a passable surface for horses or cows or something like that?
Yep.
Are they also in the mix? And then if so, is something as much as surface altered or modified for these purposes? I mean, assuming there's agreement.
So equestrian, this is a trail that potentially has interaction with equestrian, you know, cuts through farm areas.
Yeah.
That's something we definitely need to talk about more. If you tend to incorporate equestrian, it tends to be a corridor adjacent to the paved surface that is, you know, gravel usually. And so they would have 12, 16 feet, whatever the spatial need is for that horse passage, and then you would have your 10 to 12 foot paved surface adjacent to it, where people would walk or ride their bike.
So the privacy application, I don't know what the word would be, could change from property to property? Could be a fence and a nothing and a
Could be.
shrub?
It could be.
Looks like it'd be prettier if it would all be the same.
There's always the option of going into it with a proposal as the town and saying, we're putting arborvitae along the whole thing.
Or multiflora rose.
And then,
Not.
and then trying to take it from there. I mean, you could always try to set it one way or another and then see what the feedback you get is. But typically some people want the access, some don't. So by the time you get done interacting with everybody, you kind of end up with those.
They won't all agree.
No.
Yeah, I mean, riding into East Hampton, I do it very regularly, and it's a little comical that you have fenced shrubs, so it does vary throughout. I don't personally think it takes away from the use of the path at all,
Yeah.
and if it makes the homeowner a little happier, you know,
Whatever.
it's
Yeah.
maybe the path of least resistance. But it's an interesting concept. But it's just something I always wondered, how can we, of course, like support buy-in, support the project, but also try to compromise with abutters.
And related to that, and just in terms of how early to have that conversation with the butters.
So the interesting thing is, like, we could have a public information meeting, kind of design charrette thing, but you're not supposed to talk to a specific property owner about specific improvements on or near their property until after the 25% design public hearing. Because MassDOT sits down and literally reads a 2-page legal document that tells the homeowners what their rights are. And until they've been briefed on their rights, you're not supposed to engage with them, because in theory now you could be coercing them into doing something, you know, or taking a lesser deal than they're entitled to. So I would say any of those individual you know, if you're just talking to somebody and trying to gauge their feeling, that's fine. General discussions are fine, but I wouldn't go to a house and say, oh, do you think you would be interested in X, Y, or Z,
Right.
until we clear that legal hurdle of that design public hearing. And I guess just a little on that right-of-way process. So it is very regulated because this is federal highway funding. Federal government sets strict standards. Mass DOT enforces them to a T. I will tell you that. Maybe they added a couple T's in there. The 25% design public hearing is that first time when, in theory, you're notifying the public, you're telling them what their rights are. After that point, it happens at different times in different projects, but there's title searches done on all the properties to make sure that, you know, chain of custody is there for the title, because you got to make sure that you're ultimately going to negotiate with the correct landowner. They also, everybody with an impact on their property that's even temporary in nature requires an easement. There's no license agreements or right of entries on these projects, so it's all surveyor drawn deeded easements that get recorded against the deed of that property. Temporaries are for 5 years. If there's permanent infrastructure, then that's different. It could be a permanent easement or a taking. But every property with one of these easements on it will get an appraisal and a review appraisal. It's got to be the state standard, and then they get an offer.
So under the rail banking, it's going to be a different process, right?
You're good within the right-of-way.
Okay, so it's anything outside?
Anything outside.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Within the right-of-way, we get to treat it like a public right-of-way now because of the agreements that are in place. So it is what it is. That's the town's land. But anywhere you got to grade out past, or say, a lot of times drainage does it. You got to make an improvement, or you got to improve an outfall area, and that tends to trip on it. You know, you just said like the stream runs through your property, and you know, if there's work done, perhaps it influences the corner of your property. Now we're into an easement process, and there's a formal negotiation. This is at the end of the design process, but I'm just layering in for you kind of all the complexities of the state.
Right, takes a long time.
Yeah. On a job like this, it's absolutely worth it. I mean, this is going to be $10+ million in construction with the, you know, a very basic rail trail is still probably $2 million a mile. And this one's got the 2 bridges on it. It's got the culverts. So, you know, it's going to get up into the higher numbers. So you absolutely want the federal dollars to do the construction. Unfortunately, it's just a more expensive, arduous design process to get there, but it will pay back on a project like this. But I will advise communities, like on some projects, to look for other funding sources. This is absolutely not a case for that, but you know, it's just at a certain point, there's a cost benefit on the work you have to put in to get to the DOT standard, if you will.
That's an interesting number, because the number on the tip sheet does not equal $10 million.
It's going to have to go back through reassessment and getting another.
I think the number we put in this time around is up there, because I took, that number was from 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. So I just did at one point I did a straight line inflation on it. By the time DOT gets around to finalizing numbers, we may actually be at a point where we can do kind of a big picture estimate, because we may be at that 10%, and then we could be even more honed in on what we think it is. But
is it naive to think that Mass DOT meets that number, or is Mass DOT providing a number and then the town and/or committees and other efforts supplement? Or is that TBD?
I think my official answer should be TBD, but I think that it will get funded to the number that it is at the end of the day. You know, does that mean it's a fiscal 28 instead of a fiscal 27 project? Maybe. But I think ultimately they'll provide the town with the money that, as long as, when they get mad is when, like, you initiate a project now, and then in 5 years you go, oh, it went up 50% in cost. Because it's not that inflation did that, it's that you missed something, right? So that's why they're very particular in the scoping process in the beginning, to try to make sure they're capturing the whole picture.
Okay.
And then they put inflation on it, and they put contingency on it. And then, in theory, when you get there, you know, 5 years from now, you're at that number that you picked in the beginning. and all that contingency has shrunk, and all the real costs are there, and you're
Okay.
good. So,
And
That's helpful.
the money's not at risk, like, the funding's not necessarily a risky proposition in terms of 5 years from now.
no, this is, once they say yes and your project is funded, as long as you hit your milestones, I'd say this is probably one of the most secure funding sources. These are federal highway dollars. These are some of the dollars that are boosted by all the big infrastructure bills that went through, and, that's kind of buffering these programs as well. So this isn't like, waiting on a bond to go through kind of thing. So,
I think it was in the top 10 priority projects for the state.
this one,
Yeah,
it's got attention.
Wow.
yeah.
That's good.
It's known. NAS DCR has a consultant from their on-calls on board looking in Westfield right now at how to get from where it ends at the train tracks to Southampton. And we were able to participate in a call with them a couple months ago. And so, that they're all multiple state agencies interested in looking at this, trying to find creative solutions to bridge this gap, which isn't infilled because it's been problematic in Westfield and Southampton.
I also heard that there's having discussions about getting into Holyoke through Westfield also.
I believe so. Yep.
And the timeline is uncertain, but they're looking at that.
But there's a lot of focus on it, which is good. I feel like as long as we can get the ball rolling, that it'll keep going. We're trying to push it over a little hump so it starts going downhill. We're not going to be pushing up the whole time. So
Does filling in that gap help us speed up? I mean, I would imagine that we can advocate a heck of a lot
yeah,
more effectively if we know that there's a potential completion, a potential.
I think trying to continue to participate in the solution for the next stage will ultimately help this project along. Letting, and they know, but continuing to remind the state that the town is interested in closing the gap, I think will help overall.
I wonder if are we allowed to team up with Westfield? Like, can we?
I've spoken to the planner, we've spoken to the Friends of the Columbia Greenway.
They've come to our meetings.
Yeah.
Well, not the planner, but the Friends of the Columbia Greenway.
Yep.
And we've been in touch with East Hampton, although their part is completed, but we've been in touch both with the town and the Friends of the Manhattan Trail.
Yeah, the Friends group have been really quick to help, and they're the first to admit, listen, we've spent time, we've made mistakes, don't make the same mistakes we have. They're all on board with just seeing success all around because it links us to their communities and vice versa.
It's a huge presence for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
They've written letters of support for our grants.
Yeah, so they are great allies. So for sure, any of the names on the Friends group, I encourage getting in touch with.
And if it gets to a point too where you need to talk to city personnel, obviously Time Bond does a lot of work in Westfield as well, so always happy to help.
Planner's your prior employee.
Always happy to help bridge those gaps, so.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, I kind of went all over as much as I could. I was trying to give a breadth of this process and general understanding. Are there more specific questions?
We've got a couple. Let's see, it sounds to me as though a lot of prior work has had to be redone, mostly, I imagine, timed up. One of the things that was maybe left incomplete was the Phase 1 environmental study. Let me be specific. As far as I know, TNB has always done all the preliminaries. There hasn't been any other agency, so I would imagine if there's any history, you've got it. I seem to remember that the Phase 1 was probably completed, and it wasn't what I found out to be particularly bad. There was another study that was going on, which was about a quarter of the way completed, basically walking the trail before the railroad threw everybody off.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew that story. But as far as I remember, that was after the Phase 1.
Okay.
What I'm curious about is, will the Phase 1 need to be redone like some of the other things?
So I don't need, DEP sets guidelines for rails to trail conversion. Their guideline is try to move as little dirt as possible. Presume all of the dirt is contaminated, so if you do need to move it on site somewhere and build your surface on top of it, so it's essentially capped in place. But they say unless there's a reportable release, unless there's a reported historical incident that occurred in your section, you don't have to do any more due diligence environmentally. And so between the Phase 1 being basically clear and the current DEP database not having anything different or new, I think we can move forward without further environmental investigation unless something becomes apparent to us as we go ahead.
So I had spoken to Natural Heritage Endangered Species, I forget his name, and he said his big concern is if you have to go outside the current borders where it may disturb endangered species. And just, you may know that in general, but that was what they brought up in prior discussion.
If we have to, so with both Natural Heritage, there's permitting pathways for that, but obviously that'd be less than ideal anyway. With the APR protected lands, those are like no-nos, right? So if we had to go beyond the right-of-way, as we ran through the APR protected lands, we would run into some serious roadblocks. It's probably overlaps with the Natural Heritage, but there's the conservation restriction as well for the Manhan Sanctuary, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's in a conservation restriction. So also if we needed, to take property or even to record an easement, we would have issues doing that.
That section's probably pretty good. It's pretty flat there.
The right-of-way is wide, at least from what I've seen so far. I'm pretty optimistic that we'll be able to stay generally within the right-of-way. The structures are really the only areas where sometimes you start getting into, you're chasing grades as you replace a culvert. Drainage can become a little bit of a problem here and there. So we'll have to be really cognizant of those protected properties because those are definitely areas where the game is going to be to do everything we can to stay within the land that you already have. I like to design around permit thresholds and barriers when possible and stay where they want you to.
That reminds me, you were looking for a project number maybe? I don't know if phase 1 would have been included in that, but you were asking about something that I couldn't uncover. There was maybe a prior project number, and the terminology I'm not sure of, but if anyone has a history of an old project number or something that had started, that may prevent some duplicate work maybe.
We had the number, but we didn't have the paperwork.
So we were after, it's 608 something, and it's when the project was initiated last time, and the system's all online now, but 10-15 years ago it was all paper. So somebody went through the effort of writing down all the information and all the pertinent facts, and probably had some maps and diagrams. And the thing I was really after was somehow they came up with that cost number. And rather than just doing kind of a straight line inflation on it like I did, it would have been nice to actually see what they broke down for unit prices and kind of have it at a more granular level to feel more comfortable with the estimate.
You had done a structural estimate on the culverts and bridges as part of your report on the structural.
There's definitely cost in the tie and bond culvert and bridge assessment. There's some cost in the PAR feasibility study that was done, and so basically we've worked from that aggregate data at this point. And so, I mean, if anybody does have that record documentation sitting in a file cabinet, it'd be great to have it, but at this point, I don't.
I looked through all the stuff that Mike gave online for it, I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I figured it, since Doric, you mentioned that, I wondered if that would ring a bell with you or if there was any older history that would be helpful, but just took a shot.
Boy, I don't know where those papers are anymore.
Okay.
Let's see, also, I'm curious about this Gun Road Bridge situation. Were you on site here?
I was not.
Oh, okay. Gun Road has 2 trestle spans.
Yep.
First one over the water, then the second one over the road.
Yep.
If I remember right, the water one is quite a good deal wider, and correspondingly the
depth
webs
of that
are
thing.
deep.
Yep.
So of course that means there's a little bit more roof clearance over the road, and it seems like kind of a good thing. But it's kind of handy, I think, that the road span overlies the river span, rests on top of it, that particular abutment, or whatever you call the structure that's under where the brook come in. And that just seemed to lend itself to the possibility of ditching the old road span and replacing it with a weldment similar to the Route 10 one over near H.P. Allen.
Yeah.
I would think that a town would really like that, if for no other reason than to get tall fire apparatus under there.
Yeah.
I don't know if they can clear now, but that's a hell of a short clearance.
It is.
And I would think there would be enthusiasm for at least changing that one. And if I remember right, the Route 10 structure wasn't all that terribly expensive in the grand scheme of things. And it's from a design that's pretty well established, I understand.
I'm absolutely intrigued by that comment. So I'm going to relay that to the structural team. let them start turning on that a little bit too.
And just furthermore, you'll notice that both of these are trusses that are open on the top and deep
Yep.
on the bottom, and you would just upside down that over the road. Kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And the last thing is not related to bridges. In the old days, there were two prospective scenarios for the removal of rail. One was that they would be just yanked out by the railroad company, and as far as we knew, they were going to leave the ties,
Yeah.
which vary from powder to fairly solid ties and everything in between. Leave those for us to deal with. Thank you very much. Luckily, that deal never quite worked out. Another one was that they were going to be professionally removed by Iron Horse, who were going to be taking away all the ties with the rails and all the other crap that's usually left, and leave us with a much neater starting place. Now I perceive we're somewhere in between those extremes, where since we're going to be doing everything, well, we're going to have to cope with the ties somehow or another at construction time. I realize that's rather far down the road, but ties always seem like a particularly difficult area since they're toxic.
Yep.
Any comments about dealing with ties?
The project will pay for their removal.
Fair enough.
So MassDOT adopted a standard work item in practice for removing and disposing of the actual timber ties because they took on so many of these rail trail projects. So they'll be quantified by the ton and they'll be shipped out of state, disposed at a receiving facility by the contractor.
I sure like the sound of that.
What do they do with them?
Incinerate was what we were told. Things may have
Probably, yeah.
changed, but we were given to understand there were two places east of the Mississippi. One was Coppers in Pittsburgh, who made creosote by the tank car load. And the other is an outfit up in Maine someplace. I since was told that the Maine outfit has closed, but I'm not sure the reliability of that information. But they both had scrubbers on their incinerators and they were capable of burning these things. Coppers had no choice, by the way, because they were the historical manufacturer.
Right.
Had to do this. I bet they didn't like that.
Probably not, probably not. As with all of our trash these days, it just gets sent west and we don't know where it goes after that. Sad state of disposal these days.
A couple things, just so you're aware, we did get a letter sent out to the abutters. I hope you got yours. Just to let them know what the things were going to be happening.
Absolutely.
We have an ongoing list if we need to re-access them. The plan is to ask people to use the website for ongoing information, less specific things.
Yep.
The town had a vote 2 nights ago where they approved matching funds for next year's Mass Trails Grant, if we're so lucky to get it. And we expect to hear, I guess, May or June
Yep, that's
about
about right.
when the 2023 Mass Trails Grant comes in, and obviously you'll hear about that. And just for everybody, just to be aware, there's a mailing list from the voters if we need it for future.
And I did mention partially before, and I'll follow this up with an email tomorrow or Monday, but my wetlands team, so before the surveyors came through, they went and they delineated the banks of near the culverts because we wanted those picked up in the surveys, but they didn't delineate just along the path because it wasn't growing season yet. They're currently setting up a time to go back out, and that's probably going to be in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would think. And they'll have a few more days out there hanging flags. So we'll let you know so that proper notification can happen, that there'll be more yellow vests walking around hanging plastic ribbons. Probably early next week, I've got a staff member meeting with Randall and the geotechnical driller to walk the site because there's some downed trees that would prevent the drilling equipment from getting in. So as probably one of the in-kind services on the grant, DPW will probably remove, or highway, I'm sorry, will probably remove trees. If there's anything that's too big, then they'll subcontract it out. I think that the driller is available the second week in June, and it would probably be 4 to 5 days of drilling that would occur out there, again, focused at the bridges and 2 of the culverts. I will confirm that schedule, and that schedule will also be dependent on whether or not they can get the trees out of the way first. So there's a little bit of a...
And they're going to do both bridges?
We're hoping to mobilize once with the driller, do both bridges. They got to drill 45 feet deep at each abutment location. So my current idea for closer to Sheldon's, you can get to the Sheldon side, kind of off Brickyard. You can punch in, not too difficult. The other side is going to be a pain because I think you're going to have to come all the way in from East Street. So there'll probably be some access issues on the way in there. For For the two-span bridge, well, they're both two-span bridges, but the one that spans the river and the road, I think we can drill the center pier and the northern abutment from the road. There's gravel pull-offs kind of on both sides. The truck will just have to go all the way around for the aforementioned issue of clearance. On the south side, I think we can punch in off Gun Road, because Gun Road parallels the right-of-way for like a good couple hundred feet. So and I think there's a farm access.
Yes.
So we may be able to, it's public way touching the railroad right-of-way before it becomes the farm. So I think they can drive right in and go up and drill that side. So that one shouldn't be a problem. So that's all coming in the next little while. And I'm supposed to get survey-based plans, draft-based plans soon. I'm supposed to get structural reports from the sub-consultant soon, like within the month kind of timeline. So that's all really good news in terms of them completing their work, them billing us for their work so that we can fit it in within the fiscal year. So that's all good stuff.
I just wanted to confirm, you would kind of mention it on the meeting with DOT, but you don't project there to be issues with invoicing for services, maybe just so that we can keep an eye on, so as we achieve, grant funds, things like that with deadlines, we can make sure they don't go to waste.
We feel really good about the current grant, the one that expires shortly, because we got all this survey work done and that was all, had expense associated with it. So we feel really good about this one. The next one that we're hoping to get is why we're pushing DOT so hard to get in gear with us, because we've got time-sensitive funding and we want to be able to expend those dollars on productive work for the town. So, if we get close but they haven't moved far enough, there's things we could move up, like the title search, process, which is an expense. So you could always pull some things from the future in that are still worthwhile. We're going to do everything we can, administratively. Like, Ed needs his invoices by June 22nd for this grant. So like we've already got that on the calendar with accounting. We'll run special invoices in June to make sure everything gets captured. So I'll continue to work with him on the administrative end to be efficient. And from the work production side, we will manage things and pull things out of order if we absolutely need to maximize those grant dollars and keep things moving.
Great. Thank you.
So in terms of we should say, if people are asking, the really public meeting is going to be September, October probably.
That's what I'm hoping for. Yep.
We're hoping for.
That's our target.
So, which we should use.
Yep. Yeah, I just, DOT's fun, so I just don't want to overcommit. But I think we can get to that point even without them moving too much further than they have already. So I would hope in that time frame we can be giving residents an opportunity to weigh in.
In the meantime, is there anything we should be doing or collecting to help?
I mean, if people contact you, great, and if there's people coming, showing up to meetings, and if they have input and you want to jot it down and point it out to me, perfect, we'll take all the data as it comes, but
okay.
I don't think there's anything in particular between now and then.
Okay.
Can
Great.
I ask a question at this meeting?
Absolutely.
So you said something about the bike trail being the paved portion for the walkers and cyclists, and then a portion for the horses. That would be gravel, you said, crushed gravel?
Potentially.
Okay, so wouldn't that make it wider than the trail the rail trail, the train tracks that are already there?
That configuration would, and having like an equestrian side path is something we're going to have to explore. Like
Okay.
That would have to be something that was requested, that the town felt was reasonable, all the above. I don't have the full survey, but it appears that railroad right away is like probably 60 feet wide or something
Okay.
like that. So, that one track is in the middle of a large piece of
Okay.
property. Yep,
Yep.
so
So there's enough space there?
there should be, I can't,
Yeah, exactly, not.
And there's
Yeah.
one bodied water there that may be an issue, but you can do it on the other side.
Yeah.
There's a couple of places where I think that I just can't picture it applying the entire corridor.
Yeah.
I'm thinking specifically between the Gun Road bridges and, let's just go down a mile or two. There's a fairly steep drop on one side. Maybe it's the south side. So I don't think there would be enough space for a substantial gravel pathway. However, what I do have in mind is the question came from the horse farm that's further south than that. And I think they want access that's on or near East Street. So maybe where there's space and enough level elevation, maybe that is perfectly fine. I'm assuming an awful lot, but I don't think it will be the entire corridor.
So if I can revise my prior statement, if those are things that you can figure out between now and then and inform us, I mean, we could be looking at that from the get-go on like the 10% plan. So, you know, that type of information, absolutely, you know, shoot it over as you have it. Any other special considerations in different sections of the path?
This farmland, including your Gun Road and its crossings, we can talk to them to make sure we know what they need.
Yep.
And talking to the horse farm, the whole farm, and getting some idea of what their hopes were.
And it's little things too, like if we know a farmer needs access across the path, like Gun Road, like we just referenced that crossing, I may have that paved to a higher standard when we actually do the project, because usually the bike path ends up being like 4 inches over 8 inches of gravel. And if you're going to be running tractors and farm equipment across that, I'm going to go bigger. So, any special access considerations like that, horses, farm equipment, anything like that, it would be good to know.
Okay. Perfect.
I can talk to the Fletchers.
Perfect. Great. Any other questions?
Did you have anything else?
No, that was perfect, thank you. I was just wondering about the sizing of it, because I walked on the trail and it just didn't feel like it would be wide enough for that, but like you said, there's more there than I realized.
Yeah. We don't know exactly what the horse farm is going to want necessarily.
Yeah. And it'd be nice for everybody to be able to use the trail, but I was just wondering about the constraints of our property touching and what we had available.
But one of the good things about the survey is it's because of Mass DOT, you have to have a property line survey. So the survey of the actual railroad parcel will be exact. Yeah, exact. So they won't necessarily have all the abutting properties mapped out. They'll have their sideline locations where they intersect with the layout accurate. They won't have those parcels closed, would be the term for it, because that's an abutting property. But the right-of-way itself will be accurate, so we'll know. Yep.
Does the equestrian path bring up a whole lot of other safety issues?
Well, that's why I say so the town would need to be a town-led kind of thing. And, right, is there liability, safety, whatever kinds of issues? Is that really a use that you want on this corridor? So those are all very valid questions and things that need to be vetted.
There are 2 crosses, equestrian crosses right now over the existing rail path.
Yeah, cut through, right?
Cut through, which I'm sure they're
trails.
going to want something equivalent.
And it's always safe to start with the baseline of what the current use is,
Yeah.
right? And say, okay, we'll honor the crossings and accommodate at the crossings. You know, doing something longitudinally might be a newer use, and so it would really have to be some reason to do it, you know, to kind of cost benefit any potential risks, or, you know, just the fact that the construction's wider and more impactful now, so.
Well, it's not a newer use.
No.
I did have one more thought. Just when Coleman Road opened up, the new section there in East Hampton, people were parking in the road, pretty much, yeah. And then they made that nice parking area now. Has Southampton considered where we will park our visitors, the people that come to use or to access the trail in our town? Have we? My yard.
It's a really good question.
Good question.
I didn't know if that had been something that was just thought about. I mean.
We don't specifically have like a parking lot or anything like that in the project. You know, in the idea of the project, we know that people will want to park to use the trail.
Right.
So, you know, whether that's, you know, improving some shoulder areas on the cross streets. You know, one of the challenges will be that Sheldon's has a parking lot that's going to be conveniently at the end of the bike path, and so I'm sure that they don't want that clogged with people trying to use the bike path. So there's the inverse issue there, but, you know, yeah, I agree, parking is going to be an issue and a concern and all of
And
the
on
above.
Gun Road, like you said, there's that turnoff there, but I know the milk truck uses it because they can't get under the underpass, so they have to go around there, and so I know that dirt area is utilized by the farm, so I'm just thinking, like, where's everybody gonna park?
Right. No, I agree. And because there's because it's non-continuous through the town after this phase, it stops at Route 10, there's a problem, right? Because it's Yeah, so that, if it went straight through, you could just say, hey, it's a through path.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it stops, you kind of got to look at it and say, well, this is a useful terminus point, what do we do about this? People are going to be drawn to this location, so.
It's a bathroom problem too, actually, when there's a terminus. Yeah.
It is.
Good question.
Good time. You see Randall, talk to him about Gun Road.
Yeah, yeah.
Gun Road.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Yeah.
No problem. I'm glad to do it. I wanted to come say hi, and,
Yeah.
I know we're working for the town, but I
Yeah.
know how involved this group is and how instrumental you've been to bring this back to the forefront, so,
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here. And, I'm not gonna come regularly, but when there's meaningful things to talk about, I can always make an appearance, and, we'll coordinate with you guys on the public meeting front as well, so.
Good.
His correspondence with the town is going to Ed, and I'm getting a copy of those things, and I'll make sure I bring them to the meeting.
Yeah, and that's true. So keeping Mark in the loop on anything that's, significant, valuable, and not monotonous. That gets the word monotonous. Well, I'll excuse myself then.
Yeah, like I said, totally up to you,
Yeah.
but we very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
I still probably have time to get home and give the kiddos a hug before bed, so I'm gonna take advantage of that. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you.
All
right. You too.
Monday at 7.
Thank you.
Nice to meet
Yes,
you.
but it's a group that's going to be supporting this, not part of this committee.
Perfect. All right, thank you.
Mark, good to see you.
Oh, great, thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Okay, that was great.
Feels real.
So just
Yeah.
actually, I'm going to say that about, there's Friends of Greenway is being try to be resurrected, so they are having a meeting here on Monday night.
So yeah, it was. It sounded like Mike wanted to be the coordinator or liaison.
Well, I'm not sure what our role can be on that, except to provide information and share information.
Yeah.
So he actually sponsored just a group to see who was interested.
Okay.
And Jen Roberge has been involved with this for 17 years.
Mhm.
And he was, and the next meeting is to try to find if there's other people who are willing to
Mhm.
jump in and take important roles, so.
Yeah, I actually, I don't know. I don't know what our relationship should be, and I don't want to step on toes or do anything that I'm not supposed to do, I guess, in a committee member position. But I'm extremely interested in just sharing information and knowing what's going out and what the public perception is, and how that helps to gather momentum as well. It's little things like May is Bike Month, those bike-related activities and generally fun community-related things that could be kind of helping push our presence along. So just if things like this can happen, I'd like to know about it, but if I'm not supposed to, I want to make sure I'm not breaking rules.
I don't think we can be an active part of the.
You can't be a
Okay.
member.
Right, yeah, okay.
We can't be
Yep.
members.
But we can be there to provide information. I can be there on Monday, I think Mike's gonna be there on Monday. I wanted people to know, you don't have to be there.
Yeah, so I mean, is there I guess I was hoping Mike would be like a point person who could also share with the committee what the Friends group is doing. Like, we don't want to
I
be
think
two
he's planning on
separate
doing that.
parallel.
He will do that,
Okay,
he couldn't be
perfect.
here tonight, he just got back from.
I know. I didn't want us to not be
Yeah.
working together,
Yeah, he will
Big
do
picture.
that, and
Perfect.
he asked me to, something that one of us can be there just to share information.
Well, I know one lady who was at Mike's house got an email today saying the meeting is next Monday.
Yeah.
So I guess, from Jen Roberge. So I guess she's emailing all the people who were at his meeting.
Okay.
And letting them know.
On Facebook too?
Pardon me?
They have a website, which they're gonna try to, part of this is to resurrect the old
Yeah.
website. Because it's been sort of.
Well, I'll be
Or-
specific. There's a gentleman we spoke to that used to be on the committee who thinks he's still on the Friends of the Greenway Facebook group, but I don't know that he's received anything yet. And
Okay.
I didn't include him in my list that went to Mike, so it was like, I'm just wondering what,
Maybe he should
Seen or
contact
knows.
Mike then, or
If you
Jen
have a
Roberge.
fax, You could get it to my picture.
I just put down for him, he can come in something on Monday if he wants to, but we'll try to get him back.
It's
on
in
the
this
list.
room here,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they used to have a listserv, and they have a web page, but they're trying to resurrect that stuff as part of this.
And a bank account.
If I remember right, Craig Della Penna told us that he glommed onto the idle URL.
Yes, he did.
And I would assume that means
He's
he was
resurrecting
really
everything.
nice of him, actually. So he kept that from going off, dissipating to the
Yes.
winds or whatever. So I would assume he's happily handed it right back to Jen and
Already, whenever.
He has, yes.
Excellent, excellent. So it's
Can
nice.
confirm.
That's not lost. And of course, it's nice that the money hasn't evaporated. And it's also nice to hear that Jen is keeping a hand in, because after all, she was in it for a mighty long time.
Yeah.
Along with Tammy and Patty Murray and a few others. And I was afraid that she wouldn't have the energy to carry on, but evidently,
She would love other people to get more active. I think 'cause she had a major housing
She's
disaster.
got her hands full right now.
poor thing.
But she's beating the bushes.
And she's actually great.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Very good.
I wanted to ask our guest, but I didn't feel comfortable. Are we allowed to ask around who's objecting to this and what their concerns are? I mean, I would want to know if she's got neighbors that are saying no while she's saying yes, you know?
It's a fair question.
Yeah.
I think
you'd want to do it as democratically as possible, of course, cordially and not in a heavy-handed kind of.
Well, of course, but as she was here, hey,
Yeah.
you know anybody who's kind of concerned about what's going on and that we can't speak directly to, but
I get a strong sense that folks south of Route 10 on Brickyard are more than concerned and less favorable,
Yeah.
and stand to lose more in theory if the assumption of staying on the rail bed is where a path will, the surface will change.
Right.
And rightfully so. The layout down there just looks so different.
it's right through the front.
It's very just,
yeah,
it's-
I've done as much as research as I can, being new and kind of walking around, and absolutely, I would
yeah. So the reason
be
why
in favor of a bike trail and still say this thing's not going to
it's
my backyard.
close for
right here.
comfort, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, rightfully so. But the only reason why I say that, not to call them out, but because of town meeting, I know I saw some faces there, but at town meeting, there were some folks who expressed concern, but also didn't have all the information of where the project stood to date, which is another part of the reason why I really look forward to the Friends group kind of sharing information and being more transparent with what's happening. But always more than happy to share with them, especially if we can just flat out say this is not part of our scope right now and we have no idea. But yeah, I don't know how we address it. I want to be in your face kind of contact, but for sure we can be as transparent as need be for
People
anyone.
ask on the fly. Westfield is in the process of determining from the Westfield River Temperance Park to the Southampton border how they're going to do that.
Right.
And there's been a bunch of things proposed. And so one of the things is it really depends on where they're ending.
Yeah.
And I think we can say that, that's going to happen before, that's in the very beginning phases, and it's going to happen before we even think of that concretely, and we don't know what's going to look like.
I wanted to spend a little more time on the other parts of the trail, but I would imagine, we're not reinventing the wheel. These aren't new problems. I would imagine that there are solutions out there for butters that are far too close that haven't even been considered. Much more expensive, but if you need a covered bridge in your backyard in order to keep people out of your yard, then
There's some big expenses.
bring one
One of
in
the
from
things is
Vermont.
they're going to probably have to do a pedestrian bridge across Route 10 if they do this properly, which is a big expense. And
Yeah.
so that's other pieces there.
That is a very fast-moving road.
It's also a dip and it doesn't have this building. There are, I'm going to say this out loud because I don't know the answer, but I looked at the right-of-way that was signed between the railroad and the town, and there are two properties that are excluded south of Route 10, and I don't know what that means. And I actually asked Ed, and I didn't get any answer back from him. I got to follow up. But there's a chance that they are somehow not included in the right-of-way. And,
Why hangs a tail?
yeah, I have no idea why they got put in there. It doesn't affect at all what we're doing here, but it's another
Might in the
unknown.
future. Yeah.
I wonder who would know. Do you
I'm
think
gonna
there's
talk to Ed
an
again.
involvement?
I'm going to talk to Ed again and start with that, and the lawyer should know, if nothing else.
Hmm.
You're aware of the swimming pool encroachment situation, in mid-Brickyard Road?
Yeah, I was aware of that, but that's not that property, it's
Oh,
further
okay,
down.
I kind of wondered if that
It's
might be
further
part
down.
of the
It's
snow.
right where it crosses, is that about not Root Road, but whatever road that is, where the rail crosses.
Yeah.
Oh, well, if it, I forgot how this
And
works.
it's one further down.
Oh,
If it goes right to the Westfield line, there was a time when the railroad maintained, look here, we're not interested in surrendering that part.
They surrendered everything,
Oh,
yeah.
except for some reason 2 parcels are listed as excluded.
well, in the old days, just to finish the story, they wanted to be able to park rolling stock there, and I didn't know if that went away.
They apparently gave that up, and I have no idea what led up to that decision, but it reads all the way to the Westfield line, except 2 properties are excluded, and one makes no sense at all because of an empty piece of property, and the other is right where it crosses the.
Oh, I didn't think one was
race-
empty. I thought they both had residences.
I
I
may be
think
wrong.
one doesn't.
Huh.
And
Okay.
I'm not sure, but there are 2 properties, and there may be other issues that come up as a result of that.
Okay.
But it may be that they're going to try follow a different path in that area. But
Much to
I
learn.
just wanted to make people aware of that. It just leaves an unknown when we get to exploring that.
Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, the only other item that I had on the agenda was review of membership. I keep that on there as a consistent piece because we have a bit of a revolving door. Dan has stepped away. He was at our last physical meeting, so I figured I'd add that just to reiterate that we are now a committee of 8, though our charge says we are cleared to be a committee of 9, which does help having an odd number. That said, if anyone has a contact or knows of anyone who shows interest, there's room here, as there is in the Friends group, of course. So we have some flexibility there. Otherwise, we're open for comments, questions, snide remarks.
Want to do minutes?
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you for reminding me. I had them right here, didn't I?
What are we going to do first? Anyway,
Sure. So I did write that they were Doric's minutes. He recorded.
And it was very kind of you to decode those things. Thank you.
I did the best I could. I may have been general and I may have abbreviated, but either way, I hope the spirit shines through. But yeah, feel free to let me know if edits are necessary. I'm happy to make the edits, and either myself or Janet can post to my town government.
a minor clarification.
Yes.
I don't think we have to change the minutes, but the 4th to last line on the January 23rd meeting for MK grants and funding, the actual grant went in for $320,000. I don't think we have to change that because this was an approximate number.
Okay.
But just for
Yeah.
people's information, and of that, 65 is the town CPC grant, and 15 is in kind, including our.
So no change? Okay.
But just more so people are confused. And otherwise, I move to approve the January minutes as written.
Second.
Third.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good.
Okay, so Same
March
for
23rd?
March.
On mine, I need to make a change. I didn't know how to spell Alex Fagnan's last name, so that needs to be corrected. I'll do that.
NAND.
N-A-N-D, right?
Okay.
Takes care of that.
Just a minor update, I did meet with Alex Fagnan and 2 other people in person about a month ago. Just, and I think they were glad to have an ongoing contact person. And they've been good about.
Is that a change?
No, it's not a change
Oh,
in this,
okay.
it was just a clarification.
Okay.
Something you said we were going to do actually.
All right. So I can bring this Doric's minutes into my computer and then send them on to my town government and Lucy, if you want.
If
Okay.
you'd like to, I will
Yeah.
invite you for
I
it.
might as well do Doric's while I do mine.
Okay.
So no big deal.
In the Friends of the Greenway section, it says Mike Bueller. I think his name is U-E, but it's actually spelled correctly on the, towards the end of the minutes on the Greenway members
Okay.
roster.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if minutes, need corrections like that, or if this is kind of a record of audio
Okay.
comment, but
Okay,
that's the only item I
I'll
see.
fix that one. Well, if I'm fixing Alex's, I'll fix Mike's too.
Okay.
I might just say 2 minor changes or something.
I move to approve the minutes as written
With the spelling
with the
changes?
spelling changes.
Second? Thank you.
Aye.
And David, I was just thinking, since we have 8 more months left, and I did May, so I could do May, June, July, and August, and you do September, October, November?
Sure.
Does that work? Okay, and if for some reason you can't make a meeting, we'll just work that out?
Sure.
Okay.
So you will record minutes through August, is that correct?
May, June, July, and August I'll do, because I just did May, and then he'll do September, October, November, and December.
I'm gonna write this so I remember, and if I ask anyone who wants to record minutes next time, you can remind me that
Okay,
that we have
So I'll,
We have
we have the
May,
minutes
June.
to record
Good.
minutes
Yeah,
through August.
all right.
A minor other additional point, for people who didn't go to the meeting for the vote 2 days ago, or didn't see it, the Friends of the Greenway did put together a handout with some information, general information where things are going. So at least that was there for people to pick up. And it's pretty cool. The recent mailing from the Friends, if you haven't gotten it, actually includes a copy of it. I don't know if anyone, did you get?
Was it mail or email?
The email that went out from Jen today.
I didn't get it.
At the end of that is a copy of that handout.
And is it still here?
The handout? I have no idea what the end of the meeting, I left before the final vote went on for a while, so.
And I wonder, are we allowed to have a presence inside the door, or a pamphlet, or
Well,
an area where we put our
The
updates?
process, she spoke to Robert and then with Lucy Dalton to get approval of the handout in relationship to the thing. So that's now available. I don't know what happens after that.
Right.
If the Friends puts one together, they can leave it, I think, in some of the places around the building.
Okay.
Let's see if they can do that, we can't do that. Olympus would.
Okay. Anything else?
You want to set the next meeting? Tentatively or anything?
Oh, I always struggle with that, but if we're
Well,
looking at
tentatively,
Thursdays,
anyway.
let's find out.
Do we try to meet once a month?
I think it's still, we should try for that. It might too soon.
Yeah, we should be hearing within the next few weeks about whether or not we got this last grant that we applied for.
Right, that would be excellent.
Because he said the middle of June.
And if I hear anything, I'll
Or
send an
May.
email out to.
Yeah, oh, May, great.
Right? Was it supposed to be by the end of May? When did they say?
I mean, the grant starts July 1st, so last year was in May.
Mhm.
I And I think that's what they said they were going to do. I don't know for sure.
Okay. If we're into June, if we do, I don't know, so how about June 22nd? That would be the, maybe the third. I feel like there was some significance with the third Thursday, that there was maybe a room availability. That would be Thursday, June 15th. I could temporarily book that if there are no objections. Okay.
We can always wait in the workroom, that room is considered okay.
Yeah, I think we had a conflict, and I think Lucy volunteered us to take that room.
Yeah.
Before we had to actually either cancel or reschedule. I haven't been there, but
Okay, the 15th at 7?
works for me if it works for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that a Thursday also?
Yes.
Okay. Do we try to meet once a month? Is that our goal?
I think I would recommend that.
Yeah.
At least for now.
Monthly is okay. We have a requirement, I think, that it is at least quarterly, if I'm remembering correctly, but monthly is not bad. There's lots happening, so it's...
Yeah, there's a lot happening.
In summer, things tend to slide, from my experience with that group.
I'll book that for now, and if anyone thinks that they're traveling on vacation, typical summer activities, feel free to give a heads up, and if I know we're going to be shy on numbers, then I'll reschedule. That's no problem.
Can we still attend by Zoom?
It could be a Zoom meeting if we all prefer. As far as I know, there was an extension that was actually was it a state decision maybe? Ed distributed something that said it was recently reviewed and voted upon maybe.
It was extended too.
Right, extended. So I can't remember how it's phrased exactly, but we do have clearance to continue on Zoom. It remains an open public format.
I mean, it's nice to be in person, but if it's a question of quorum and it's a question of, attend or not attend.
Some people can attend from far away.
Meeting or not meeting at all, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it the capability of having some people present and others,
Hybrid.
a hybrid meeting?
Yeah, I don't know how to, I don't know if there's a way to execute that here. I could ask. It looks like there are remote call-in features actually, so I could ask and see if that is an option.
Yeah, it wouldn't even have to be Zoom necessarily. We can go right back to the Stone Age and use our phones.
Dial in.
Yeah.
True.
Conference call.
Conference
I haven't done one for years.
We need to center that thing a little better, but otherwise.
So what is the difficulty that Paul Verbal is having? Is it something that could be resolved by a hybrid meeting? Why is it that he?
I'm not sure. I did share. Ed actually pushed me because we were not meeting quorum, and he said if you have folks on the committee who are unresponsive and not attending, it's make a choice. Attend or make room for someone who will be more active. I said exactly that to him. We're aiming to make votes. We have decisions to make. Do you want to stay on, or can we make room for someone who's able to attend meetings? And he told me he wants to stay on and hopes to make more meetings. Unfortunately, he's not made any in a long time. I will put that on my list again to review and say, we are very active now, and we want very active members. I don't know. I don't know if that's a.
It doesn't work like that?
How long ago did you speak with him?
It was probably a couple meetings ago. So there's been a chance. We are being recorded. Should we vote to adjourn?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Second at
Third.
8:16.
Notice Jerome is third.
Just not.
Did you log us?
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.